Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post. I am Ghadi Francis coming to you from Mount Lebanon, West Asia. And this is WION's weekly show where we bring you all things new from this region. From Gaza to the United States of America, Palestinians are voicing their cause. We will discuss a lot that is lined up for today's episode, but first let's take a quick look at what's making the headlines. Our main focus this week is what the whole world is focusing on. The UN Security Council held a closed-door meeting about Iran's nuclear program. Now, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is rejecting talks with the US. He calls it deception. This on one hand, and on the other, China will be invited to discuss Iran's uranium. A lot is revolving around Iran's nuclear capacity. We tell you more in this report.
Amid renewed US-Iran tensions, the global spotlight is once again on Iran's nuclear program. Last week, US President Donald Trump wrote to Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, once again citing Tehran's nuclear ambitions.
We're down to final strokes with Iran. That's going to be an interesting time. And we'll see what happens. But we're down to the final moments. We're at final moments. You can't let them have a nuclear weapon.
Iran's Supreme Leader has spurned Trump's offer, stating that talks with Washington will yield no results, especially given the crippling sanctions on Iran.
Some bully governments insist on negotiations.
Imagine a world where owning your dream asset is just a click away, where wealth is no longer exclusive to the few. Tokenization, the game changer transforming assets into digital opportunities. A revolutionary technology opening doors to a new era of investment. Don't miss Token Money Magnet, a bold initiative by Culp Foundation. Only on WION World is One.
On Wings this week, we feature must-try holy delicacies as the Festival of Colors is here. We also cover the Culinary Arts India event in New Delhi, and how food trends change in Europe from Moscow to London. Only on WION World is One.
General Brice Oligui Nguema, the strongman of Gabon since the 2023 coup that overthrew the Bongo dynasty, submits his candidacy for the April 2025 presidential election. In a remote Maasai community in Kenya, young girls are learning more than just academics. They are training to stand up for themselves. And a Nigerian mother turns her crochet passion into thriving footwear business. Watch World of Africa at these times on WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
What do you think about the tokenization of this program?
I think it's very innovative, tokenizing their own show.
We want as many people as possible to have a go, experience it, set up a wallet.
I think it's a fantastic opportunity to open up a wallet, understand what it is to have the fractionalization of something.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
YO1 Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to YO1 Health Resort. Make your reservation at yo1.com.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
Catch me on Token Money Magnet only on WION.
As the world gears up to celebrate the Festival of Colors, we get you a list of films you can watch on Holi. Find out all about the record-breaking Chinese film Lisa 2. And get a glimpse of the recently concluded Mughal-e-Azam the musical. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION eClub at these times.
Violence ravages Syria again. More than 1,000 people killed in 2 days. It is one of the deadliest clashes since the country's civil war erupted 14 years ago. The fighting, a brutal mix of anti-government uprisings, security force crackdowns and revenge killings, pushes Syria deeper into chaos. Look at this video from Latakia, a port city in Syria. More than a dozen unidentified bodies of civilians lie on the roadside. Reuters was not able to independently verify the date of the video or the identity of the bodies. There are 13 bodies seen in the video, and the dead appear to be wearing civilian clothes. It is likely the worst communal violence since the fall of Bashar al-Assad. In December 2024, long-time Syrian leader and a member of the country's Alawite minority, Bashar al-Assad, was unseated by rebel groups. His fall was seen as a turning point for the country, raising hopes for a more stable Syria. But 3 months later, are those hopes fading? Syria's interim president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, has been grappling with the fallout of mass killings of members of the Alawite minority in western Syria. Sharaa said the recent violence threatens his efforts to unite Syria after 14 years of conflict. The government of Syria says it has ended an operation in the violence-hit coastal cities of Latakia and Tartus after 4 days of fighting between security forces and pro-Assad armed fighters. The clashes put the focus back on Syria's vulnerability. We break down the new fault lines, decode the power struggles, what lies ahead. And can Syria's new government maintain peace in a country still suffering the effects of more than a decade of civil unrest? It was the deadliest wave of violence Syria has seen since the fall of Bashar al-Assad in December last year. More than 1,000 people were killed in just 72 hours in clashes between security forces and loyalists of the ousted regime. The once powerful Alawite community bore the brunt of the bloodshed. On the 6th of March, gunfire and chaos broke out in Syria's coastal regions of Tartus and Latakia. Pro-Assad gunmen ambushed security forces. In retaliation, government troops joined forces with Sunni armed fighters to crack down on the insurgents. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that among the dead, 830 were civilians. Many are said to have been shot at close range. More than 125 government security personnel and 148 pro-Assad militants also lost their lives. To understand what exactly is happening in Syria, one must understand its demographics. Tensions between the country's Sunni majority and the Alawite minority had been escalating since Assad's downfall. The Alawites, once dominant under the Assad regime, faced retribution. The new government, led by interim president Ahmed al-Sharaa, had vowed to create an inclusive political system, but many remained skeptical.
So what basically happened is that former regimes had tried to launch an uprising and a counter-revolution, basically, in a localized area in the Syrian coast, where the Alawite minority is the predominant demographic group. In the initial phase, many Syrian security officers and civilians were killed by the regime remnants. And in response, the Syrian army launched a counteroffensive and sent huge military reinforcements to Syria's coast and basically crushed the uprising. However, as there are tensions between the Alawite community and the non-Alawite community in Syria, we have seen some violations being committed by the Syrian government forces. And this was actually not a surprise because the social tensions are quite high, and many Syrians think that the Alawite community is responsible for the crimes of the Assad regime.
Tensions escalated after armed Assad loyalists ambushed Syrian security around Latakia and Jablet, killing 13 personnel. Pro-Assad Alawite gunmen overwhelmed government security forces and later took control of Kardaha, Assad's hometown, as Damascus scrambled to bring in reinforcements. In the government crackdown that followed, hundreds of civilians were killed, mostly Alawites. But who are the Alawites? The Alawites are a small sect making up just 10% of Syria's population. An offshoot of Shia Islam, they were historically marginalized until Hafez al-Assad, an Alawite, seized power in 1970. Under his rule, Alawites controlled key military and security positions. Hafez remained president for 30 years, until his death in 2000. After Hafez's death, his son Bashar al-Assad inherited the presidency. But the power structure they built crumbled after the fall of Assad.
So the Alawites are a small sect, a minority religious group, which is predominantly located in Syria's coast. Bashar al-Assad was of Alawite descent as well, and he basically used and exploited the Alawite community for its state and for its crimes and to suppress the Syrian society. With the collapse of the Assad regime, the Alawites face two main difficulties. One is that many in Syria perceive them quite difficultly, and they have a real anger against and hatred against the Alawites. This is a reality, unfortunate reality of Syria.
3 months ago, the dominant group in the rebel alliance, led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, overthrew Assad. Since then, they have asserted control over Syria's Mediterranean coast, once a stronghold of the Assads. HTS leader Ahmad al-Shara became the new government's interim president, but 3 months later, Shara faces big challenges maintaining peace in the country. The interim president said the recent mass killings of members of ousted President Bashar al-Assad's minority sect were a threat to his mission to unite the country, and promised to punish those responsible, including his own allies, if necessary.
Syria is, as we have confirmed, a state of law. The law will take its course on all, and we originally fought the regime and reached Damascus to defend the oppressed people, and we won't accept that any blood be shed unjustly, or goes without punishment or accountability. Whoever he is, even if he were among those closest to us or the most distant from us, there is no difference in this matter. Violating people's sanctity, violating their religion, violating their money, this is a red line in Syria. This is not only a constitutional law, but it is also a moral law.
There were reports of mass executions and systematic killings. Electricity and water were cut off in large areas of Latakia, pushing civilians further into crisis. Videos show the intensity of the violence, bodies left on the streets, unburied, unclaimed. Civilians, including women and children, are among the victims. After days of clashes, Syria's government has announced the end of the military operation against pro-Assad insurgents. The government also said that security forces will continue searching for sleeper cells and remnants of the insurgency of former government loyalists. Life gradually returned to Latakia's streets on Monday, the 10th of March, just days after Syria suffered one of its worst bloodsheds. People watched in lengthy queues outside bakeries to get their bread. Many complained of shortages.
There is no bread, no water, no electricity. There is nothing currently.
We are 13 people at home. They gave us 2 bundles of bread. If we make a sandwich for each child, they would only take 1 sandwich per day. What is this life? Look at all these people. I swear it is painful.
Security forces continue to patrol the streets.
2 days before the clashes, the situation was good and Ramzan was beautiful. People could go out to work. But now look at the street. It is empty and people do not go out.
On Monday, the Syrian presidency announced an agreement with the head of the Kurdish-dominated Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, to integrate the institutions of the autonomous Kurdish administration in the northeast into the national government. Hundreds of Syrian Kurds came out onto the streets of Qamishli to celebrate the announcement of a deal in Damascus. Celebrating people chanted unity slogans, raising Syrian PKK and SDF flags. The SDF commander Mazloum Abdi said that they were working together with the Syrian administration to guarantee a transitional phase that reflects the aspirations of the Syrian people for justice and stability. What is the SDF? What is the history of Syria? And who controls what in the country now? Syria is home to one of the oldest civilizations on the planet. From its ancient roots to the Syrian civil war and the recent political instability, the country has had a complex and chaotic history. Modern Syria gained its independence from France in 1946. Between 1949 and 1971, the country had waves of political instability, with multiple military coups and coup attempts. Between 1958 and 1961, Syria briefly joined with Egypt to form the United Arab Republic. In 1963, the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party, which was active throughout West Asia since the late 1940s, seized power of Syria in a coup known as the Ba'ath Revolution. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel seized the Golan Heights, a rocky plateau located in southwestern Syria. Conflict over this coveted area continued for years. It goes on to this day. In 1970, Hafez al-Assad, the Syrian Minister of Defense, overthrew the de facto leader of Syria, Salah Jadid. Hafez al-Assad was an Alawite, a minority group in the country. During his presidency, Hafez was credited with strengthening the Syrian military with the help of the Soviets. Hafez ruled Syria for 30 years and died in 2000. Bashar al-Assad inherited the presidency after the passing of Hafez in 2000. At the start of his presidency, Bashar al-Assad released 600 political prisoners. Syrians grew hopeful that their new leader would grant more freedom and impose less oppression than his father. However, within a year, Bashar used threats and arrests to stop pro-reform activism. In 2002, the United States accused Syria of acquiring weapons of mass destruction, and listed the nation as a member of the so-called Axis of Evil countries. After a few years of diplomacy between Assad and other nations, the United States renewed sanctions against Syria in 2010, saying the regime supported terrorist groups. Revolts in Egypt and Tunisia, which became known as the Arab Spring, broke out in early 2011. At the height of the Arab Spring, pro-democracy demonstrators took to the streets in Syria as well. When the Syrian government used deadly force to crush the dissent, protests demanding President Bashar al-Assad's resignation erupted nationwide. Syria descended into a multidimensional civil war with the involvement of different countries. In 2024, Assad was finally ousted after his regime collapsed during a major offensive by opposition forces. For more than half a century after Assad's family reigned supreme over Syria. Let's take a look at the territorial control of various groups in Syria. The most powerful faction, which now controls most of Syria, is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Led by Ahmed al-Sharaa, who is also Syria's interim president, the group has its origins in the al-Nusra Front. Initially aligned with terrorist groups Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. Sharaa's focus on local Syrian governance over global jihad led him to split from both groups by 2017 and merge with several other Islamist factions to form HTS. The group has since rebranded as a more moderate and pragmatic organization that has promised to protect minority rights. The Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, is the military force of the Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria, which controls the eastern region. Led by the Kurdish People's Protection Unit. It also includes Arab militias as well as minorities such as Assyrians and Armenians. While the group's secular democratic ideology and equal treatment of women has garnered international support, they have been accused by other rebel groups of collaborating with the Assad regime and are considered by Turkey to be a branch of the separatist Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, who are designated as a terrorist group by multiple governments. Still holding territory in the northwest is the Syrian National Army, or SNA. Having grown out of the loose coalition of rebel groups known as the Free Syrian Army early in the Civil War. The SNA represents both Islamic and secular factions that are directly backed by Turkey and support the so-called Syrian interim government based in the town of Assaz. While they have at times been both an ally and a rival to HTS, the SNA has consistently fought against the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. Historically rich